And that brings me to where we are in our calendar. And where we are in our calendar is changing time as always, right? We're moving into Shabbat, and we are cognizant. We are cognizant of the approach of Pesach, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. I'd like to bring you in to a melody. Use this melody however it speaks to you. You are my beloved. You are my beloved. You are my beloved. I will sing this again this morning, but I wanted to begin there. And if we could do a screen share, Mark or Rachel, I'm not sure who's doing our screen share today.
Um, Hold on.
So
Rachel, you got it?
as that comes forward, thank you to both of you. As that comes forward, we are moving into a special Shabbat. Shabbat is always special. This Shabbat is Shabbat HaChodesh. And Shabbat HaChodesh is the Shabbat that tells us that Nisan is approaching. Nisan, the month of Passover, will begin next week on April 9th. And Shabbat HaChodesh is a Shabbat that talks to us very specifically about the new moon and the sacrifices for the new moon. But what I wanted us to really focus on is that just like we have a month of preparation for the high holy days, we have a spiritual path, not only in the Omer after the Passover Seder, but we have a path towards Passover, right? We remove chametz from our homes. You may be eating up all of your chametz right now, your breads and your pastas and your cookies and cakes, to make space for Passover and to essentially just release those substances from your world. And I learned this teaching from the Chabad community a number of years ago, which I totally love. The word chametz, which is the word we use for the substrate, the foods that I just mentioned, breads and pasta and cakes and cookies, these are foods that have yeast in them and they're puffy, they rise. And so when we think of chametz, we think of something that is soured or that has risen. It is fermented in some way. And chametz is often used to describe character traits. It's often used to describe a sense of puffed upness in ourselves or arrogance or maybe even just too much pride. And the teaching that was shared with me, which I love, and if you look here, we've got the chet, the first letter of the chet of chametz, and then the mem. Notice the way we spell chametz with a final tzadi, but lower down, I put just a regular tzadi here so we can see just how similar the word chametz is to the word matzah. So we have the mem, which shifts position. We have the tzadi, which shifts position. And we have the chet, which was taught to me as a letter that is completely closed. And therefore, it allows all of our internal puffiness and arrogance to get closed in. And the reason that we eat matzah is if you look at this hay, there's a little bit of a break right in that chet. So it becomes separate. And all of our arrogance flows out when we move into matzah and we connect to our humility. What I'm thinking about this year is a painful year for so many reasons, but all the more so since October 7th. This year is a painful year. And so before we begin our meditation, I'm going to sing again, "You Are My Beloved." And I invite you to take that into your heart, your soul, that this will be an opportunity to connect with yourself as the beloved. And then as we move through this meditation, I will guide us into seeing how we might be able to connect more fully to this journey of preparation to Passover in a loving way. So I invite you to find your seat and relax your legs into the ground. If it's comfortable for you to pull your spine away from a seat behind you so that you're self-supporting in your spine, please do that. Allow your hands to rest uncrossed comfortably in your lap. And focus your attention with a soft focus. Allow your eyes to close if that's comfortable for you. You are my beloved. You are my beloved. You are my beloved. You are my beloved. As we begin to bring our attention inward, I'd like to note that somebody has sound on. They could mute, that would be terrific. Thank you. Bring your awareness to your belly. Feel your belly move as breath enters and leaves your body. Feel your spine fill up and soften as breath moves through you. Bring your attention to your shoulders and your chest, where your heart is. And above your heart, below the collarbones, where the thymus gland is, which helps to regulate and strengthen our immunity. And if it feels comfortable for you, you might want to take a hand and rub here just for a moment. We're walking with so much stress. To allow our thymus to see that it is beloved. It is taking care of you. And notice your throat. Are you holding tension around your vocal cords or somewhere in your throat? Is your neck feeling like it can soften in some way? Bring your awareness to your face. Allow your cheekbones to receive light and grace from creation, from the Holy One. Be aware of your third eye, just over your eyes in the middle of your forehead. Does it feel that it is receiving? Does it need a little bit of a touch of the hand to soften? Expand your awareness to your skull, your scalp. Softening the tissues around your head. And once again, perhaps bringing your hand to your crown. Are you aware of energy coming in and going out through this space, connecting you with all of creation? Take a look and see if there's somewhere else that you feel drawn to bring your awareness, to bring light, to soften. As we walk this journey preparing for Nisan, getting closer to Pesach this year, we may be filled with a number of different feelings or thoughts. Is there one that seems to rise up, that is asking for you to free it? Something that's holding you like that chet in chametz. There may be a number of things. You start with one. Acknowledge whatever that is. With love. And with your breath, or your compassion, or your tenderness, see if you can release just the little side of that chet and allow some of the stress or emotion or discomfort around that issue to trickle out, maybe even to pour out. And as that happens, you may notice discomfort, loss, fear, uncertainty. Who will I be without that thing? In that moment, allow the space in the hay to receive joy, to receive possibility, to receive light and love. We'll take quiet time with this, continuing this process. I will conclude with a bow. as we begin to bring our attention back to the room that we share. I invite us to hold that the beloved is always here. And we can always avail ourselves of this healing. Shabbat Shalom. And an early Chodesh Tov.
Thank you so much, Robin. And friends, let's seal the practice as we do each day, offering an opportunity for those of you who are reciting Kaddish, either because you are in mourning or observing a yard site, if it's your custom to join in Kaddish. You're welcome to join in, and if you're not reciting Kaddish, please stay present for those who are until we conclude. Thanks, Rachel, for sharing the words on the screen. If you're reciting Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbi.
Amen.
Yamad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechan yom echon u'chayei d'kol Beit Yisrael v'hagala v'zman kariv yimru.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabba
Rabba
mevarach
Mevarach
v'olam
Olam
Olamaya.
Omaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yipamam v'yipaseh. Yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kusha v'yichud. La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata ta'amiran ba'alma v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mamav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Good to be with everyone. And thanks to our teacher today, Rabbi Robin Damsky of Limitless Judaism, and Rachel Hugot for holding our text space, and for each of you for being here. And as always, welcome to stay on for conversation with Rabbi Robin about today's teaching as we wind down the days of the Adar Bet, second month of Adar, and turn towards Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is arriving next week, Monday night and Tuesday. Just a program note, will be led next Tuesday by Sarah Waxman of At the Well, or was led by on Rosh Chodesh by Sarah, on or near Rosh Chodesh by Sarah, and in the full moon by Janet Sadaka. Robin, thanks so much, as always. I appreciated the simplicity of this practice and bringing awareness to the roots of those two keywords for this season, or the coming Passover season, chametz and matzah, and the juxtaposition of the letters. And what was coming up for me as I was looking at them and listening to you was, thinking about chametz, which, as you described, is about being puffed up. And the root of that word has these kind of different connotations. Sourness, like the modern Hebrew word for pickles is chamutzim. So I was thinking of sourdough bread. I was just thinking about the activated nature. I began to think about chametz as activated, and conversely, matzah is not activated. And activation takes time. There's a reaction happening in the dough, right? I'm no bread scientist, but I know that much. There's some chemical reaction going on with the flour that causes that puffiness, or causes to rise or expand, expansion. But before that expansion and before that reactivity, there is the now. And the matzah, so if you're going to feel like this practice of beginning that process of clearing out the chametz is about noticing, the cut to the chase here, so I was feeling like, notice being activated, notice reactivity, and come back to now, that's the matzah state. Come back to matzah state, and then go back and forth between chametz and matzah. So I want to just invite you to, if you want to riff off of that, or just
Yeah.
expand a little bit about, we can understand this whole practice of clearing out the chametz very literally in terms of, and people are saying like, why is that chametz? That's not bread. But it's really about the principle, that the spiritual principle that's
Well,
involved.
it's interesting because as I was listening to you, I was thinking that matzah, in order to be matzah, well, the shmura matzah is
Mhm.
guarded, if you will,
Right.
but matzah, in order to be matzah, needs to be completed from the beginning of the process of preparation to the end of the baking in 18 minutes. And you talked about things that are like just the now. And the longer it sits, what happens is it begins to attract wild yeast. So sourdough bread doesn't have any active yeast in it, but it has wild yeast that it attracts from the air. And when we make bread or cookies, we actually add yeast to the dough. And then there's a rising time, right? So you were talking about the now, and you were talking about
Hmm.
the souring. It almost seems like the more we let things sit,
Hmm.
the more we cogitate on them, the more we recycle them internally, the less pure, right? And the more attached and the bigger they can potentially become. So I'm riffing off of what of what
Yeah.
you just
Thanks.
shared. Yeah.
Thanks.
And matzah's not my favorite food. I'm not a real matzah advocate. Um, but I think that there's something very precious for us in acknowledging how we stew over things.
Hmm.
And as you said, how we get attached or stuck, right? It's like the chet, we get stuck in
Hmm.
a certain mindset. So taking a minute to breathe, just the breathing of itself, the breathing
Hmm.
in and of itself may open the chet. Oh, yeah, I don't have to hold. I don't have to hold so tightly. And then as I was sharing about this process towards Passover, much like Elul, where do I tend to do this in my world? Where do I tend to hold? Where do I tend to defend? Where do I tend to, um, you know, to cogitate over the same things over and over again? And can I free myself? Isn't that what Passover is? We have to start with the freedom internally. Can I free myself of
Hmm.
some of these inclinations, these patterns that I lean towards?
Great riff. That's a great riff. Here's this question from Heidi. I'm interested in more ways to give the thymus more attention. The reference to immunity resonated because I have autoimmune disease.
Mm.
Maybe it's working overtime and needs to be told to relax. A lot of
Yeah,
people, a lot of
yeah. So
attention to that one.
the thymus here, right? So maybe
Hmm.
even a tiny bit lower, but right here, one of the things you can do is just tap it. And if you tap it when you're talking, you can kind of like feel how it makes your voice change. Tap your thymus or massage your thymus or over your thymus, because obviously the thymus is deeper inside, so you're not getting fully into it. But that tapping will bring oxygen and circulation to that area. It'll soften the area. And if your attention is on, I am well, I am healthy, I am taking care of myself. Those words, just like we do in a mantra or in a guided meditation, can have a really powerful impact.
And Ruth is asking, could it also be that, as they say, be the yeast for change? I'm not familiar with that phrase, but now I am. Let the positive energy bubble forth out of us to others and take a cleansing and recharging moment for ourselves.
Wow, I've not heard that before, Ruth, but that's really lovely. Um, be the yeast for change. It's interesting because one of the things that yeast does is it ferments. So it brings the question, maybe in the positive way, what is it that we're letting churn, right? That needs to be brought forward for well-being and healing.
Um, well, the other thing is that, it's not that this tradition is saying that chametz is bad, right?
No.
We spend
Right.
most of the year with chametz. It's just this
And
one
lots
week.
of it, right?
It's this 1 week. Um, it's not even the same proportion as Shabbat to the days of the week, but there's something in the overall cycle of the year that says 1 week, we're kind of taking a sabbatical from that souring, fermenting, activating, in order to infuse so that maybe the chametz is less reactive and more responsive, or
Mhm.
more the positive change, right? Um,
Sure.
I don't.
And maybe another way we can look at it is when something has sat for too long, there's bad wine and
Mhm,
there's over fermented food.
right.
So there's that sweet spot, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's a Baker Buddhist thing. Um, I have a question here that asks, how do we find what we need to find so we can let go of it?
Hmm.
My experience is that if I stop enough and just start paying attention to being in this moment, some thought will continue to arise again and again and again, or some
Hmm.
sensation in my body will keep taking my attention, or some emotion. Even if I'm not aware of it right off as an emotion, I might say, wow, oh, that's hurting, that's tight. And if I allow myself to breathe into it, I might discover that there's an emotion underneath it. So those are three different ways that we can maybe find those things. And I think also if we walk through our day and notice where we keep being drawn, the words that keep coming up in our mouths over and over again, the emotions, the mindsets that keep surfacing in our lives, those are the places that we can go, oh, that's maybe one of those places where my chet is holding.
So what would be your suggestion, Robin, for taking this practice out of this sit and into the rest of the day and into Shabbat? How might we do that?
So yeah, I think one of the things that I want to say, perhaps more importantly than anything else, is to be compassionate with ourselves. It's so easy to be not necessarily even hard on ourselves, but forget to be compassionate with ourselves and to walk through the day and say, oh, I am my beloved. Or maybe it's the creator that's my beloved, whatever that feels like to you, that you can hold to your thymus, hold to your soul, hold to your heart and your mind and say, oh, I can be softer. And when those painful or difficult moments arise, because they will, just say, okay, if you can't bring softness to it right now, to just say, okay, I acknowledge that. And I'm going to take a little time for myself at some point and bring. I love the Sylvia Boorstein's practice. It just comes back to me over and over and over again, where she says, I know you're hurt, sweetheart. I know you're hurting. I know you're hurting. So those are a couple of possibilities. I also want to say that as we are moving into Shabbat HaChodesh and moving into Nisan, that this is the time of renewal, right? We've just begun spring a little bit ago, a couple of weeks ago. This is a time for renewal. So to perhaps continue to allow ourselves to be renewed. As you said, matzah is new, to be renewed,
Hmm.
to perhaps have some beginner's mind at this time when it feels very, very hard to do just that.
Yeah. It's worth, I think, noting that in the calendar, there's so many complexities, but also really amazing resonances in the Jewish calendar that we're talking about 6 months ago that we were preparing for Rosh Hashanah, right? It's hard to believe. The month of
Yeah,
Adar, which is the
amazing,
month
right?
before Nisan. Yeah, different world.
And I
Um,
got an email this morning that said we are approaching 6 months since
yeah,
October 7th.
yeah,
That's just
we're at the
right.
6 month mark.
So
And
painful.
the practice of kind of doing this cheshbon, taking this inventory and resetting, actually takes place multiple times during the year, but particularly at these two moments in Nisan and in Tishrei, these two poles that were and bread is involved with both, right? On Rosh Hashanah we have tashlich, where we gather the crumbs and
Right.
And here here there's before the night before Pesach, there's a tradition of bedikat chametz and biur chametz of planting breadcrumbs around the house and hunting for them and then burning
Right.
them or destroying them in some way. So really, I think you're inviting us to really consider what are those, what is that chametz that we are gathering to eliminate, to let go of, so that we can, as you said, start anew with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is the start of the year, the first month of the year in the Jewish calendar.
Right. And I think, I'd like to add that with the overwhelming pain and difficulty that we've been feeling since October 7th in ourselves, even in our relationships with people we love who have different points of view on this issue than we might, and everywhere we turn, that I think it's fair to say we're in a state of unrest. And when we're leaving Egypt, we are leaving something that is very toxic and very imprisoning. So how can we use this teaching perhaps to begin to take off some of the shackles, feel the soreness, literally the hurt, and say, okay, I'm hurting, and I still have light to put out, and there's still light that comes in.
Thanks for that. Beautiful
Yeah.
kavanah to bring us into these last few days of Adar and into the month of Nisan.
And
Thanks.
I might, just before we
Sure.
disconnect, I'm going to put my website in the chat again. And there are two things that are coming up. One is I will be offering Omer teachings on social media and through my website that you can subscribe for. Also, I'll be teaching at this year's Limud. So if you connect with me through my website, I'll make sure to get you the information on that. And so that is now in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much. And if you scroll up a little bit, I'll put it again here. Our lineup of teachers for this coming week. Monday, we're going to be led by Rabbi Daniel Raphael Silverstein. On Tuesday, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Sarah Waxman at the well, as I mentioned, will lead us. Wednesday, Zach Newman will join us. We have an international crew next week from youth from the UK. On Thursday, Mira Weil will join us, and even somebody from the United States, Rabbi Margie Jacobs, will join us from California a week from today. It's Shabbat, so we look forward to a beautiful week. And just a reminder, the week after that is the week that Rabbi Sam Feinsmith will be leading us to prepare for our Pesach and the week leading up to the last week. And by the way, we're going to be on a hiatus during Pesach. IJS will be closed during the days of Pesach, so we'll be on a little bit of a break after that. And of course, back during the Omer right after Passover. Okay, everyone. Robin, thank you so much again.
My pleasure.
And Rachel, to each of you for being here. Wish everybody the restoration, renewal that we all need on Shabbat. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here on Monday. Be well, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Everybody. Bye.